Good afternoon, everybody. Uneducated Economist here. So about 6 months ago, I did a video talking about how to get the homeless out of your sight. And in that video, I was describing Multnomah County's attempt to try and deal with the homeless issues that were taking place. They were putting up $14 million in an attempt to try and house 200 families. And now in this attempt to house 200 families for a year with $14 million, I thought to myself, this is not helping. This is not something that is going to help these families. It might give some temporary relief. It might ease the pain for a moment, but very few people are going to actually use this moment in time that they have in order to really excel and benefit themselves. Most of them will just take advantage of the situation and then they'll find themselves back on the street in a year. And that's exactly what we are now finding taking place. I'll leave a link down in the description of this video in that previous video that I had done that describes this exact situation that is happening here. And now here's the major issue that I'm finding with it is that when you have so much money that you can literally throw it at the problem and in order to not fix it, but just to make it go away. That's what their attempt was. And so I think the level of consciousness that was taking place in order to make this happen, and the level of consciousness that it took to create the problem. And this is exactly what we are now finding as a result of it, is that the problem is going to grow worse. Because the attempt to try and fix the problem from the same consciousness that created the problem is going to make the problem that much more worse when the problem starts to come back again. And this is what we're finding, is that when you have people who have been sitting in their house, not paying rent, not paying utilities, and not making any attempt to really hold on to what it is that they have, then they're going to find themselves back on the streets. And now it's much harder to even get off the streets again because of the mental deterioration that takes place from that. See, this is like almost torturous to the people who they're trying to help, because it's not help, it's pity. And pity is a low-level vibration consciousness. Right? It's fear, it's anger, it's frustration. All that stuff is what's going in to try and help in the problem. It's not helping. It's the same thing with climate change. You know, climate change has more people who are angry about the situation than they are feeling like hopeful and beneficial about it. Right? It was like 7 times. I'll go find the article for that one, and I'll leave it down in the description of this video. Right? This is what ends up happening, is if you throw this kind of emotion towards it, it's a low-level vibration. You make the problem worse. You don't fix it. You can't fix the problem from the same consciousness that started the problem. And since the problem was created from envy and guilt and frustration and fear and, all that stuff, like all that lower vibration stuff, it just sits there and manifests and grows worse. If you really want to fix the problem, you got to raise your vibration. You got to do it from a different consciousness. See, if people had taken that $14 million and they actually thought about it for just a little bit, and it was just like, okay, how do we deal with the homeless problem? Well, they need a place to live. Well, let's throw $14 million at the problem, give them a place to live 1 year, out of sight, out of mind. Is that really fixing the problem? No, absolutely not. It does nothing to fix the problem. Now, if you had taken that $14 million and done something to try and, say, deal with the mental health issues that have created the existence in which that these people are living in, well, then you have something that might actually do something that they can, or attempt to help them in a way that they could help themselves. You see, most people have issues with the way they are thinking, and that's the reason why that they are, in the position that they are in. And in order to cover up the way they're thinking, they start doing a lot of drugs and alcohol. They start throwing around a lot of blame. And they're not really thinking in a way that is progressive to their own life. Okay? And this is really where a lot of people are facing problems, but nobody wants to address that. Okay? $14 million to put 200 families into houses for a year that now they're going to have to leave and try and find another way. Now that things have gotten that much harder, you think that was help? That was really helping? I mean, it's not, right? So we think about like what it is that is going to help, what it is that the individual person needs to do. You know, it's not necessarily even the idea that you actually have to do anything about it. You have to just be in the consciousness that this is not the way that it should be, right? And if you raise your vibration, you put it into something of more of the acceptance and love and joy and happiness, and you take that kind of energy towards the problem, then you can actually fix the problem because it's not coming from the same consciousness that created it. You see, I know it sounds crazy to do that, but you actually have to have love for the attempt to help. Not doing it out of fear or guilt or anger or frustration. If you're doing that, the problem gets worse. And that's what we're finding. Okay? See, all these people, they're like, you need to be like, feel sorry for these people. Really? Feeling sorry for them doesn't help them. Right? You don't feel sorry for them. That's not how this works. Stop helping them in that fashion. It doesn't help. Right? You can't feel sorry for somebody in a position in that fashion, or else there's no way that they're ever going to find their way out of it. Right? I mean, yeah, it might suck for them. You can feel sorry for a moment, right? But don't feel like completely, like utterly helpless towards this, because that's not the way it goes down, right? There was $14 million that could have been used adequately, right? Instead, it was just thrown to waste to get people out of their sight. That sucks, man. Why would they do that to these people? That doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. I mean, I could see where people will be like, yes, please throw me that help if that's what you're offering. Yeah, I mean, why wouldn't you want to accept that, right? But really where it comes from, where the real help comes from the change of consciousness and the feelings that you are having when you are actually attempting to help. Because if it's done from fear or anger, you're going to make that problem worse, just like what we were seeing. And I don't know how else to explain it in this fashion, but you can find it in just about everything that's going on out there in the entire world. It doesn't matter if it's, dealing with the homeless, or if it's dealing with your own personal relationships, or if it's dealing with your business or job or anything else that's going on out there, right? If you find that you are having issues with it and it's coming from fear and anger and low vibration stuff, change the feelings, right? You have to. That's the only way to fix the problem. See, that's why you hear it's so cliche to hear enjoy the journey, but that's really the truth of it, right? Because if it's the success that you're going for, the moment that you are not successful, then you are going to feel low vibration stuff, fear and, anxiety and frustration and all the other stuff that comes from, in the attempt to try and be, at the top all the time. It's not that. It's the journey that you are on. And that's where I think that a lot of people, if they would just, try to understand that is really the way that you help people, is to try and get them on that path. All right? You can't throw a bunch of, material things at somebody and say, here, go and, live life like you're supposed to. Like, I don't know how in the world that was supposed to work. Like, it doesn't make any sense. All right? But if somebody was sitting there and finally realized, it was just like, man, all these trauma impacts that I've had throughout my life, and, focus in on them and realize what they are and be aware of them, and then know that you can actually have a functional life with these issues that you have had, just moving forward with the understanding of it, then you can actually have a successful life all on your own. You don't need somebody else to say, here's an apartment and here's utilities and here's food and here's all this stuff. You can do it all on your own, right? You just, literally have to be thinking in the proper direction. Nobody wants to help people like that. And it's very difficult to, to try and offer up that kind of help, especially when somebody's not willing to accept it. But that's the help that's needed. And it has to become from a higher consciousness, a higher vibration, not one of fear and guilt and anger and frustration. Right? It has to come from understanding and love and acceptance and, peace and harmony and all that other things that come from it. Otherwise, it's just a failure. It's exactly what we're seeing today in Multnomah County with it. Uneducated Economist, you let me know.